All right, everybody, welcome back to the dojo. Johnny, man, I really appreciate you coming out and joining us here. It's an honor to have you.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Yeah, it's that time of year. It's time to talk deer, but like you said, there's really not much of an off season for us when you're obsessed. But I did slow down a little bit, got away from it in June into July. But right now, August, it's gonna close in fast.
I know, man. I feel like I'm just out of time already. I think I'm leaving for Nebraska here in like 3 weeks, and I can't believe it's already that time.
Geez, yeah. I thought about hunting September, and I'm like, you know what? It ain't. I mean, back weeks ago, I'm like, it ain't gonna happen. I know it isn't. So we'll just put that on a back burner and maybe next year start September where we're going to start in late September, October. So,
Yeah, man. So, what are you doing right now to, I guess, get ready for season?
well, had a lot of cameras I put out earlier, uh, late spring and the summer, um, but always going over the Spartan Forge app, always looking at maps. So, like, I had areas that I wanted to put cameras, let them soak, see what was there, even areas that I had like historical data of bucks that are around. Um, but in doing that, it also frees up my mind to find new areas or like fine tune those areas that I have cameras because I feel like the season will come and as ready as you think you are, it could be like that. And, last year I had a couple incidents where a guy logged an area, loggers come logged an area. The guy put a stand in one area. In another area, there was old well roads going across the mountain, and they decided to start using them. That buck was living right near there. Um, like four things, and then I bumped one. He winded me, so 4 or 5 bucks or spots that I had like vanished, and that was the first week of October. So yeah, you can never be prepared enough, and I always talk about know as much as you can. Um, but yeah, right now I'm kind of got a lot of cameras soaking from June, kind of summer scouting. I mean, surveillance through the summer, and like I said, maybe fine tuning those areas with like I was like, man, I'd like to. So I got all my cameras on. Like, man, I need another 7 cameras just to kind of get further into detail of these spots or like new spots. Um, so yeah, here in the next couple of weeks, I'll get a few more cameras out, and then as I'm transitioning into like a velvet shedding, maybe a change of food source going in, like maybe oaks. So I got out of the 7 cameras I want to throw out, or on like an upcoming acorn crop, you know, um, or just other areas I think deer might be inhibiting, going into the season. So yeah, that's where I'm at as far as scouting and cameras right now, you know.
Yep. So, like, you're hunting big woods, Pennsylvania. Um, is there any ag around where you're hunting at all?
No, not at all. It's all yeah, it's all wilderness. Um maybe there like there's some public that I'm hunting like in Ohio that or West Virginia that you can get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um Probably a mile. But I think this year's going to be a good acorn crop in those areas, so it doesn't bother me really.
No,
But
I was wondering, like, as far as glassing goes, like, are you employing glassing at all? I mean, I would imagine it's kind of difficult to do unless you're using power lines or something like that.
well, no, some of these areas that's a good um, question. Like in northern PA, some of these cuts, so maybe like some logging roads or gated roads that you can get up in this time of year through the summer, and they might have like a younger cut, 2 to 3 years, select cut, excuse me, going into a drain. And I when I'm up at my camp, I live near Pittsburgh, and then my camp is a few hours away. Everywhere I hunt is like I don't hunt around where I live, so everything I got to travel to. But my camp in northern PA, we do a lot of like throughout the summer, I'll take a ride before dark and just kind of observe the deer coming out. All already areas that it's like some of my cameras are out for like this first week of October. I'm hoping to capitalize early. They've been doing a lot of select cutting, shelter wood cuts in my area, so we're into year 3, and there's a ton of browse food for these deer. So um, I'm really hoping to get on a deer early. I got probably 8 or 10 bucks that I'm probably gonna kind of hunt. But yeah, definitely. And then in PA, we're allowed to spotlight, so
Yeah.
I'll do that in the summer too. Well into the season, like when you get out of the tree, sometimes you can't have a weapon with you. I'll come back to camp, throw my stuff down, and head up on a mountain to where I hunted, or a spot I might want to hunt, and look for eyes, see where you're half hour after dark, so they're probably not too far early in October. I mean, they're browsing and feeding, so um, chances are they were kind of hanging close. So that's spotlighting. Even last couple of years have been through the season have been helpful for me. And actually, a buddy of mine shot one last year. He just wasn't sure where he's going to hunt, and he did a loop and spotlight. The deer come up because some of these roads are kind of on the tops. It's kind of flat, and so it drops down into drainages, and they just kind of come up maybe with the thermal or something, come up near the road at night and feed on the flats. And he had saw a couple shooters, and he got in a tree the next day and he shot one. So it can be that easy. But
Yeah, I know. I mean, for me around here, because I hunt a lot out of state, so I'm not putting a lot of my like early season, postseason scouting isn't really happening where I live. But driving around and glassing, and then we can use the spotlights too. Really
yeah,
helps. It's a quick way to find a target. If someone's a little bit behind the 8 ball right now, it's a method they can use to at least get in the general area of something that they might want to hunt.
yeah, and like you said, Matt, kind of where I am and things I think that are important going forward now. And like I said, I'm not hunting September. I threw the towel in. I thought about it. I have a lot left to do to prepare for October. But I mean, one big thing is for saddle hunting. This is my second year saddle hunting. Man, you got to be able to get up in a tree quietly, and that's going forward here. Like I got into a tree last year in the saddle. Bo showed me, here, this is it. I'm like, all right, we're in his backyard, wind's blowing, cars driving. Oh, I got this, no problem. Up now, which it wasn't a big deal, but fast forward to hunting season when you go out before daylight and you could hear a pin drop, and I'm like, whoa, I'm a
Yeah.
little noisy. You know, I'm making some foreign noise, and most of the hunts that I do early season are within 200 yards of a mature animal that I'm hunting. So um, I think that's probably a really important thing, is to get your gear. And I was always so fascinated with deer and following deer through the summer. I get so obsessed with that. Any free time I'd make free time, or any free time that I had, that's what I went to the woods. I went to the forest. I hiked. I walked. No, 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 because I'm like, I'm fine. And once now, I'm so many years, I'm pretty good at knowing, and I don't have to scout as much um, as I used to, because you figure you take 30 years of scouting, and it's not all the same areas, but you can kind of breeze through it a little, not exactly that way, but you don't have to maybe hit the hot spots or whatever. So and I'm hunting areas that I've been in the last few years. I'm just kind of fine tuning them. So I'm on maybe year 4 of this area or that area. I kind of know the area. So um, yes, I need to focus, and I know you're only as strong as your weakest link. So that's where I'm at now. Is next week they have a Mobile Hunters Expo coming up here this weekend, PA. I'm going to go and talk to Bo and some other guys that I know there, and just kind of really get opinions on what is the best way to be quiet. And there's tons of, more than one way to skin a cat. Kind of not in like hunting. I try to take a little bit from everybody. It's not like not black and white. Like, I don't believe this guy has all the answers and this is the way to do it, or this guy. And we are not that guy or that guy. We're a different person. So you have your take, you have this guy's take, and you kind of hodgepodge of stuff. And so that's my plan, is just to figure out my way of getting in a tree. And that's the biggest issues I have, is before light. I got to the point last year, and I had a cameraman with me, that we wouldn't hunt a morning set unless we had a stand from the night before, because I said, we're too damn noisy. It won't happen. We can't get in a tree. So I don't want to hunt that way, because morning and evening stands could be totally different. So I think that's the biggest thing going forward, is getting quiet with your equipment, whether it's stealth strip, and practicing with it. Even if you go out in the morning before light, in your backyard or wherever there's a tree, and get it down pat. Because especially, I'm going to have a camera guy this year again. You got two guys, and twice as much ruckus. So that's probably the number one thing of when you're hunting a mature deer, and you're always on this public ground. You got to be within 200 yards. Some people say 100, but I'm being lenient and saying we could maybe have 200 yards. It's that last little bit of light in the evening or morning, coming into bed down. So that's the number one thing, Matt, that I'm focusing on. And then once and if you have some historical knowledge of these deer, then when cameras tell you food, whatever, that's the biggest thing early October, is to set up catching them coming back from like here in the forest. The cuts are like food plots, and they're moving right off and right around gray light into daylight. They're still in that summer feeding, getting that last little bit of food before they bed for the day. So you definitely have opportunities early. And then, if for the guys that maybe you're like, man, I haven't, when I was 18, 20 years old, there wasn't trail cameras, but I wasn't all summer. I wasn't, every year we get worse and worse and more obsessed with it. And like you said, now it's 247, but I would, I would start, like you said, spotlighting, watching fields. But even going, and like someone asked me recently on a podcast, what's the biggest tip, you know, that you could tell someone? I'm just like, know as much as you can, even if you're, like even last year, I think the first 2 days of archery season in the mornings, I went up, or it was actually the day before, I, like someone would glass, I would go, there was clear cuts, and I would hit them all a few days before and see where the bucks were retreating to, maybe a hiding spot. Then get your map out and start. And actually, the spot last year that I did that was a whole new spot for me. I did have some cameras I put out, and it was like August that I put cameras, a cut, a south slope, and they were retreating like up the hollow during, as far as when daylight came around. They would go up the hollow. There was a spring on that south slope, or down in the bottom. It was cool. So, and these big mature deer, they're right there. You're talking about the time when they're definitely fattening up. Like, this is it, man. They got their winter coat, and this is not a lot of, these deer aren't focused on moving. Like, it's feeding, 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 and bedding, rest, because all hell's going to break loose in a couple of weeks, and they know it. So, I mean, if you catch that deer like at daylight going, or like the evenings, you can capitalize on them. So I caught that buck. I threw a camera on that south slope, and I went and checked it, like, and I got a picture of him, and I didn't know a lot about the area, and that's what I did. A couple mornings I got out, and I noticed the well guys were driving these roads checking wells, and I was like, well, that's good. They were like daylight, so I'm like, that's cool. They're used to traffic. It wasn't a road that nobody ever comes on. Then all of a sudden, here comes Johnny Stewart, and deer like, what's this? So there was activity on these roads, and I slowed down, and I saw them twice in the same spot feeding and going down in this drain in this cut. And I did all right last year. I had him win me. Thermals were pulling. One time I hunted, and just somehow I dropped my floaters, and it just kind of went up the hill, and he winded me, and that was the end of that hunt. And then there was another buck with him that I I was out in the cut, and he was coming kind of, it was an evening hunt. He was coming out, and I had a younger buck behind me snort, and I had my bow back on the bigger one in the edge in the mature timber, and he wouldn't come out. It was 50 yards. But so those hunts there unfolded just from my August spotlighting and reading your maps, like finding where the clear cuts, where the fresh food is, and like these deer, like I said, I've watched them. You want the so like maple trees, saplings, young 2-3 year old, they love those. Um, any variety of plant life that's grown in these clear cuts, but also blackberry browse is a huge thing for these deer. They'll just exclusively like live on it, you know. And I noticed that these deer, they know where these concentrations are of this food. It'd be almost like in a food plot, maybe there's one area that's been browsed over, and there's one patch, you know, that, or maybe a piece that's by the road, and that's like the last spot they go to, and everything's browsed but that. So these bucks know where like the concentration of this browse is. They're not into wasting energy at all. They're going to get out, and they want to feed in one area and get as much food as they can without expending a lot of energy. You know, they get in the mature woods, it's mainly rest, water, um, some browsing, maybe around the springs, maybe transitioning like a whole different cut. Maybe might move in a half mile. But I mean, when they're coming out at night to do these feeding and these cuts, you know, walk those cuts and know exactly where you see and like right now, you can go out right now, and this is the best time now going forward, hitting these cuts, and you could see where the deer, and I go out in them at like midday. Like if you have, you know, like you said, you're going to put this podcast out in a week. Just go out 1 o'clock when you know they're not out in where the daylight, you know, it's a lot of sun's coming in and creating food for these deer. Go out at 1 o'clock when you know they're not in there. Hike around and see where the trails are as they navigate. See where they're concentrating, where it's been freshly browsed, you know, and you'll start seeing areas where they want to, you know, these big deer want to feed around. Um, and they are, a lot of these areas, they'll do a herbicide spray, and then they'll chop down the undesirable trees, the birch, the beech. They're like 6, 8, 4 inch diameter trees that are just sucking up the sunlight and putting shit, you know, nothing else will grow. But they'll drop these, or even tree tops, you know, from maybe a logging. They leave them nowadays for the browse to grow up in around there, you know. And I've noticed um deer when I would go spotlight, and it's like you'd see the trails maybe entering and exiting these cuts, but they go right through the garbage, the trash, because we're looking at like August into September when the easy stuff's maybe browse, you know. But also a bigger deer might utilize that as some cover, you know, if he's getting out there before dark. um so yeah, walk these cuts. So fast forward this year, the spot I had talked about last year with them 2 bucks, they're still there this year. I got their horns, but now I was able in off season to go find. I put a little bit too much pressure on them last year, learning the area. I still had a chance at them, but I didn't really know everything. Where this off season, I went down in the bottom. I found a beaver pond. So on the backside there was beds, and I didn't know it was a big grassy from the south slope. It looked like just a big grassy area, you know. And I said, oh, my thermals are going down there. That's good. But just on the backside was where his beds were, and I think the whole time I was hunting that, he was already smelling me. You know what I mean? Like it was stuff that I didn't know, but I still had luck. So you can add on, build on to, like I said, I'm going into areas that are 4 to 5. That's a second year area that I'm hunting, but I got some areas, and I keep building on. You know, other deer move in, or this buck, you know, like you can, every if stuff starts growing, like every year shit changes. So it's like a new season. But so this year I'm going in, and now I know more from my postseason scouting, you know. And then also like a thing that I did here, I want to mention, like back in June when I was dropping my cameras, I felt like June was a good time because, like I said, all my cameras that are out now are kind of soaking for the deer for a late September, early October hunt, which to me is like the summer transitioning into fall breeding, mast, dip scrapes and stuff like that. But you're right there on the cusp of that, all that, to where you can still catch them. But also, I went into some areas in June that I had scouted new areas in March when the leaves were off. But when I went in June, it was almost like I felt like it was almost like October. It wasn't like we have a lot of ferns. It wasn't like the ferns were in full bloom. They were kind of 75%. Everything was like 75%. To me, it mimicked like an October setting where you still have foliage. You might have had a frost or two, so the stuff that's there's kind of decreasing maybe a 25%. And I went to my areas. That one area was another beaver pond that was like I was like that it was in March. I actually found this spot, and but when that June foliage was on like 75%, I'm like, whoa, this feels like October. And I was able to see the security cover that wasn't there in the previous March, February, whatever. It was like wide open. So I felt like June's a great time to like get some scouting in for that early October, because it kind of looks the same. And a lot of the sign, that you do in your posts, that you find in your postseason scouting, your scrapes, your rubs, and stuff like that. That's like for scouting October, you're not going to see that sign. You're not going to see the sign they make in October. Like there might be some little rubs, but as far as like an early, like a summer bed going into like October, they're not leaving tons of sign. And where the cover is then, it can be a 180 from second week of October into third into November. It's a sharp transition to how they're living their life and what they're doing. So it was neat for me to be out in June, even in the summer, like finding the little bit of cover that exists in these areas to where they could be laying in the September, going into October, so it was a big help. But even like you said, now I'm also hitting these cuts, looking for where they are, browsing, and like you drop your cameras here, just come out in the week, get some cameras in where you think they're feeding, and just kind of you got to draw conclusions to these deer. And I've always said it's kind of like you have 1,000 piece puzzle and you have 10, 20, 10, 15 pieces, but you don't have the picture on the front of the box. You're like, and sometimes it's like, maybe in yourself, you would be like, is this a picture of a bird? Is this you've got to use your brain to help bring everything out. Like and that's why I always say the word maybe a lot. Like maybe they'd be down here. Like I took people hunting that aren't, really experienced, and maybe why do you say maybe? I said, I don't, I'm drawing, yes, it's a good chance that that's what's going on, but I don't know. I'm just drawing conclusions and still putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And that's why I always talk to anybody, even people that don't have a lot of experience. Like maybe you have an opinion. I took my fiance hunting one, and I said, so what do you think? She looked at me like, what? What do I think? You're the big deer killer. I like, I don't know, maybe you got an idea that I don't. Maybe they want to go down by the creek because they think it's hot and they want to drink. You know what I mean? Well, I'm in deep thinking about scrapes and rubs. It might be that easy. So, um, yeah, it's easy to get into it, but yeah, it's like a wormhole. So I don't know where I was going, Matt. But
No, it's all good, man. So I got a couple things that I was hearing. So first of all, I think just throwing this out there, and I don't know if I heard, I think it might have been on a podcast with you, Rendell, Eric, Jace, and then Bo. You guys went and looked at a clear cut, and somebody mentioned that the clear cut kind of reminded them of actual ag field as well. So if you hear Johnny talking about a cut and you don't have big wood cuts. You can think of an ag field as well, because they're using that. I mean, right now I know I see bucks bedding in the beans here. I don't, once the pressure hits, they're not going to be in those beans, but they're definitely eating off of that stuff. So you can go in and start, working that just like a cut and following, where those deer are moving in and out of.
Yeah,
One question I have for you is there a line that you draw, like a date where you're like, I'm not going in there anymore? Like, um, I don't want to, disturb it. Or is it like, hey, look, I need to get this information. I'm going all the way to season opener if I have to get that information. Like, I guess on the scale of that, where are you at?
I guess it depends on what I know of the area. If I know enough, like the area we just talked about last year, I kind of went in hard because I didn't. All I knew was they were coming out here to feed at night. I seen them maybe in the morning a little bit, and I haven't. I went in the mature woods and it's vast and thick, and it's just like there's no sign to see in August. So I really put cameras out, hit it hard, trying to get as much intel as I could. Um, I don't know if it was the best route, but I wanted to know the area. Now, this year, in the off season, I was in there. I found a horn, and I put cameras out in June. Like they're there, and like I said, I think last year the wind was the thermals were pulling down at a beaver pond. I think he smelled me, so he's going to set up there again this year to see if I'm up there. Like he's like, I want to know that he's up there. So I got cameras down at that beaver pond, but I'm not. I'll go in this year. Um, I I worry that maybe my cameras are out in June. Maybe not all of them are working. So I might drop a few where I'm not bumping deer, but for the most part, I don't want to go in there till I plan a trip there on the 20th of September. Like I said, I might throw one or two cameras out, but I don't want to go in there. So I'm going to go in there September 20th, which is 2 weeks before the season. Um, go in there, do my thing, check my cameras, drop new ones, pick trees or whatever, and I'm done till the opener, and that would be the 5th of October. But I will, in the meantime, drive them roads maybe in the evening or morning just to see, okay, everything's looking good. But yeah, I think sometimes I know in the past, but it's got me to where I am as far as drawing conclusions and making the right decision. Because in the past, I didn't know, and that's what I had a hard time sitting in a tree, not knowing, and I didn't know a lot about deer, so I would get down a lot and walk, and yeah, probably bumped deer. I mean, fast forward maybe 15, 20 years. Now it's like I've done that. And there's even the years that I didn't kill deer. I hunted all year and I learned all year. So now I feel like I'm that much more dangerous in the woods because I did probably screw up a lot pushing deer. But that was my own person. What I wanted to learn about these deer, and there wasn't much info about these deer that I were hunting. You know what I mean? So I went in like if I didn't like the spot or I wanted to see what's over the next ridge, I would go look because it was more. I think it was more about knowing about these animals and learning them than it ever was about killing them. Like there was this blank spot in my mind, and I wanted to know what they were doing. But fast forward now that I do know a lot more, I can draw them conclusions and put a filter onto them um, to know what I need to know. But like I said, it's in a newer area than the area that I have historical sign, you know. Um, but yeah, that's it's dependent, I think, Matt, on I think if I get enough knowledge to where I could be dangerous to kill an animal, then I'll kind of back off and like kind of watch from a distance. But I feel like I got to have feel like maybe in my head I need a certain, like you said, one of it, you know, out of a scale 1 to 10, as far as your chances of killing that deer, I'd have to be at least like a 6 is what I'm feeling. I need to know that much about the area to be like 60% chance that I could sit there and kill an animal. If I know 40%, like 4 out of 10, like I feel like I'm not going to hunt there. I'll go learn more about that area till I get it to 60. And then I always take into consideration what I'm doing and was the scent I'm leaving and where I'm pushing them. You know what I mean? But then again, I have, like that's why I have so many spots is because like I might have put a little pressure on it. So I'm gonna move to the next deer, and go to this one or go to this spot or if I think I messed this up, then I'll transition to another area that I think he's gonna be. But I feel like you gotta have give them their odds, but you gotta have something in your favor. And I feel like it's gotta be like 6 out of it, like 60% chance. Like I feel like, hey, I got a chance here. Anything less than that, I won't hunt or I'll put more time and more cameras, but once you get into that 60, 70, better like the area now from last year, I feel like my odds are I got a good chance, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I don't, so I'm backing out a little bit. I'm kind of watching from a distance. My cameras are in place and I'm always studying that map and like, I mean, all like religiously, all these different areas. And I think the main reason I study these is because when I look at the map, I think anymore what I do, like I learned about myself, is whether it's a pin or just between a couple pins I dropped, what's this kind of where they could be? What's this area look like? I kind of close my eyes and I get to the point where I know, like if you drop me in that spot, I'd open my eyes and say, okay, I know exactly where I'm at. I feel like the deer, like I'm spending 1 weekend a month, you know, scouting, and these deer are there 247, and so I need to be as close to their level of knowledge of their environment, not from a satellite image. I need to get to their level as much as I can and kind of imprint the area in my head. Then I can kind of navigate myself while I'm looking at the maps through the terrain and the forest. And, I'll scroll over looking at, like, could he be there? Have you been there? What's that looking? I kind of like how I kind of, or I might have to go to that spot again just to refresh my memory of what it visually looks like, you know. But yeah, like I said, maybe now that I'm like 70%, I feel like I know the bucks are there. I haven't checked my cameras. So this area we're talking about, I'm going to go in and pop a couple out here, maybe in mid-August. There's no mast crop in this area. It's just a browse bucks. They're just beech, cherry, maple. Hardly any beech. I don't think there's any crop there. So it's browse. So there's not going to be a huge change as far as mast where they're going to move. They're going to be there. They were there last year. So I'm going to get some cameras. I'm about ready. I'm going to drop a couple cameras in August. And then, like I said, probably just go in September to, end of September and check them and stay out of that area. But like I said, every area is different to where if you don't have enough knowledge, then I'll keep on them. I'll keep knowing. And then fast forward into the season, like, get good with your equipment, study your maps. It could be like we talked about that, knowing the area. If you're on a 2 and get out and go through it, man. Another thing is talk, make noise, walk around till you get that number up to that 60%, 70. It might be that easy. I've done it in the past where I didn't have areas ready and I wasn't sure. And you don't have that confidence, like that 60 and above percent chance of having success. And you're down around hardly anything. I'd get out, I'd study, get out and hike. I used to have a dog. I took my dog with me, make noise. If the deer are close, they'll run off and come back, but it could be as easy as going and they start making rubs and scrapes. finding them spots that are hot, make noise, walk around, talk to yourself, um, and whoa, this is happening. Throw a camera out. Um, this looks good. Go to another spot. Get 12 of those spots. If you have enough public land, watch where the hunters are. So it could be just getting working through the season to get yourself to that 60% chance of success. Until you're there, and that's what I always say, no, no, KNOW, no, 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 everything, know as much as you can. Then when you get to where like, okay, then you say you got half a dozen cameras. I feel like I'm going to get a picture. This is going to be a good spot. I mean, to everybody that's different. You take someone like me that or you knows more about it than someone they don't even know what they're looking for. But you get that fresh buck rubs, fresh scrapes. Some of that might be nocturnal, but masked. Feeding fresh scat. They're probably not super far. Look down. I was telling me look downwind. That's probably where they're coming from. But it could be a matter of just scouting all season. Being ready with your equipment, being ready with your bow. Scout till you get to your thinking like I think this is it. And if that's what your goal is to kill a deer. There's times like or there's people, and I know it's happened to me where it's like you work hard all summer. Sometimes you just want to sit in a tree. I don't care about. I just need to sit. And there's times I've gotten a tree. It was middle October, the first time to hunt. Here come a buck. I'm like, no, I don't want this to happen. I want to experience a frost, birds chirping, and seeing some does, and having like, having a close. I don't want it to be over, and that's where it comes down to each individual is what they want to hunt, and I would always wanted to experience the start of the season through and until it was like and a lot of times I wouldn't shoot a deer just because I didn't it'll be over and I'm done, and then it goes back to me not knowing because my tag's field and I don't know what's going on in the forest. So I would stay. There's times I'd be out until January and I didn't really care if I killed a deer or not. So I guess it depends on what your goals are. But as far as success, it could be just a matter of hitting spots from here forward. Like you said, maybe spotting, evening, morning, reading your maps, being good with your gear, being good with your bow. Um, Having a ton of new spots to check and getting odds in your favor and trying it a few times.
Yeah, I think what I hear you doing is, I mean, I hear long game with you. Like you've built up all of this knowledge over this time, and you went out early, in your career, and maybe you were walking around, like you said, and kind of bumping deer and stuff like that. But your goal was to learn them, and then it seems like the natural byproduct of learning the deer like that is that you actually, you get pretty good at killing them. But it's this long term like knowledge seeking kind of mentality where, as before we started this, we hit record. I said, hey, we can talk about summer scouting, and then maybe, try to help the guy out who's just listening to this going, oh crap, like I'm just now realizing the importance of this and I need to get on it. I would add on to like what you're saying to that individual and say, I think the goal's not necessarily to kill a deer this year. Then, like, if you're just hearing this and it's hitting home, and you're going, "Man, I didn't do the work. I should have done the work. I'm going to get out there and do it." Well, that's good, and you could increase your odds this year. But think of a much larger in the aspect of every moment you're out there now and throughout the season, and you're scouting and you're learning, and like you said, walking with your dog. And I like how you talk about talking. Don't walk around like a predator.
Yeah.
Walk around like someone that they've seen walk around, just that's not a threat to them, and gather that information and start it now this August, and you keep building on it. By next August, you're going to be, so much more prepared, and your odds for success are going to go much higher. And you just keep building on it for the long term. And I think while you're building in the long term, I used to hear that and go, oh, no, I need to kill a buck right now. And
Mhm.
every time I focused on killing a buck right now, I actually didn't build into the long term stuff, because it was weird. I was just so focused on not learning, just killing. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, when you switch to learning, like then you have something to build off of. And that's what I've listened to you, Johnny, for a long time with this and your scouting and the build your way of looking at things and asking those questions and being curious. And it's like man, you just like you're stacking on top of all these learning moments to where like it just you become efficient because of all that curiousness, all that walking. Almost what I'm going to say is not being efficient in the beginning, right? Like just
Yeah.
gathering all that information. And so don't look at it as a loss this year if you're just hearing this now. Look at it as this is the start of your learning journey, and you're going to keep learning, and it's going to get better and better and better.
Yeah, and like I said, every season that I was out there and didn't kill, I was if you work hard and like get some knowledge out of it, get to be out in the you know out in the forest and with nature, like you're not working, you're out doing what you want. It's like this was a great season. I mean, it was great. I learned about these creatures, and I was out there doing what I wanted to do. And I mean, what more would you want? That's to me is great just to be out there. And like I said, it was like you said, always asking myself questions and keep pushing and pushing until I figure out the answers. It was like, if I see a deer, what's he doing there? Why is he there? Where did he come from? Like, this is the stuff that would go through my mind when I was spotlighting. What's he doing? You know, and then I would start going to where I seen or just driving up the road. When I was younger, I hunted deer trails and then you drive up the road and you'd see deer or a mature deer, and a lot of what we're talking about is about mature deer, so they're a lot different than the younger deer. But I noticed just in the history that seeing a mature deer, I'd go over whether it's daylight or not so much spotlighting, it might be um, morning, evening, or you see a buck, like I would go over there and evaluate that area that he was standing feeding. What was he doing here? It was like that. And then, you know, over time, those spots that I'd see mature standing and I'd started seeing like what they need because this buck is actively out, on mainly hard hunted or public land doing sometimes during a rut, or any time of the year, and you would just walk where you saw him, you follow or tracks in the snow, follow him, just like then you start feeling what he needs to feel to be comfortable and move through the forest. It's like they were a lot of times maybe a dead log. He was kind of sneaking, like wow, this is how they move, and they want to feel some cover around them to where they're just not totally exposed on top of a hill. But it was now I get to the point like just this past weekend, I was at a spot that I got a big deer on this kind of, it's like this point, and it kind of heads northwest, kind of not real sharp of a point, kind of gradual, maybe 50 yards across the point, and it dumps down into a creek, and like the western side of that is cut, and then it gets down into some mature woods, and you have a north flowing stream down there, and then the point creates an east or west flowing stream, And I last year I got this deer coming out of this cut and going down, and I mean I'm talking 200-300 feet elevation down, to where it's cooler, it's hot up high, and I found, and I just got down there and I could just feel how there was an open area of hemlocks, and I'm like, he's not walking through here. And I felt like from my experience last year, he would kind of hang out near the cut. And as the days got warmer, that's another thing I like early October is you get a hot day. I want a hot 80-degree day. That's when I want to hunt in October because I can eliminate a ton of area right now. What he's looking for is some cool weather, So that's one thing I want. They got that heavy coat on. They're like, man, I need to chill out. I'm not worried about women. I need to cool down during the day. But I got down to where these two drains, this creek that ran north and this one that ran west, and that point we just went all the way down. So it was kind of like cut up high, some mature, thicker timber, and then down low is open hemlocks, and that's where it was cool. And he also crossing that creek coming out of the heading west out of the east. But you just get into an area and you just sense the terrain. There was just a little drop, and that lidar is good on Spartan Forge. I study that, and I could see like a little bluff on this point here, you know what I mean? It rolls down and then it gets to that creek that flows out of the east, and then there was a little bit of a bluff you could see, on LiDAR, or just me, I looked at it after, on LiDAR after I was in there, but I'm like, no, he's not going there, and just some dead logs, and it was open, and you could just start, like I said, over the years, just going out and seeing a mature deer and going to that spot and following, seeing like, then you start saying, you start becoming that animal and you start sensing what you need to get around and how lazy you are. And he's not walking, and then I always talk about being the furthest downwind. And like, if you have that west flowing drain, and this creek ran north like this, coming out of the south, and it's a predominant south wind, and you got these thermals. I'm like, everything's just clogging right here. And it's like, and that drain goes up there behind that cut, hundreds and hundreds of yards of forest, and browse and food. Like, it's not like there's, besides the cut, it's, they get in that mature woods, they could be anywhere, and you start getting lost in that mindset. And I do sometimes have like two people on my shoulder, and one guy says, he could be anywhere, John. This deer could be anywhere. And the other is, he's not just anywhere. He don't live just anywhere. So I fight with that a lot, because that's two things that, but seeing both sides of it really help you, not just being like, I know, I'm not that person. I'm open-minded to what could be going on out there. And that helps you be a better hunter, not like, or like people that tell me, or I listen to other people talk. It's, I don't say, well, this guy, he got it. Not everybody goes out and kills a deer every time they hunt. It's not that way. So you kind of take a little bit from here, a little bit from there. And I always talking about the balance scale. You just find out where you need to be with your deer that you're hunting. But yeah, so, and I'm like, and it's the furthest, like, he wants to smell what's up that drain. He's not going to be halfway up the drain. He's going to be way down here. And I talk a lot about safe areas that these bucks will go to, and people get hung up on thermals, and going up high, and the thermals come up, and then they, I'm like, well, they don't live like these deer in these mountain areas don't, and the one guy asked me recently, said, do you think they, you know follow the wind in their nose, all, or like, I said, it's not that they don't live that way, man. It's they might set up to get the wind or the thermals to a spot they want to smell, maybe if there's danger there, or if it's a food source or what have you, but they just move through the forest and live their life. It's like, we go to work every day, and how many people get killed in the car every day? You're still going to go get in your car. You're still going to live your life. They don't, I think they could set themselves up to smell stuff that they want to, but it's not always nose in the wind, nose in the wind. I feel like sometimes more crosswind, or like I said about the safe areas, these deer, I feel, you take a 7, 8 year old animal, 7 years in the woods. I'm like, holy shit. Like, I feel like I know the land good, and I'm talking like maybe 3, 4 square miles that he probably knows. And as he gets to that age, it gets smaller. It'd be a pocket here, a pocket there. And so, we know that because of these deer, all the knowledge out there. But man, 7 years of them being out there, and they really know how to navigate, be efficient. And like I said, that they're gonna, I don't know where I was going, Matt, but I mean, they'll be down, like, anyway, that spot, I just sense where he's going to cross that creek. You know what I mean? And it's not always the deer trail that these bucks follow. Like, that's where he's other, and he's going to be actually downwind of that. So I followed, like, I actually found his track. It was wet, 2 tracks that I know are his. And I threw a couple cameras up, but I said, oh, I talk about safe areas. Like, if he comes down that hill, I don't care if the thermals are falling and he's going down the hill. He don't give a shit, because he's never seen a person down here, especially if you add in maybe a road down there, and like, it's like a no-brainer. He's like, he'd probably tell you, if like, I'm not going to see anybody down there. And then a lot of these cameras in these areas, I'm running on video to see their demeanor, how they're acting. If you got this 6-year-old deer that's sniffing the ground and eating for 10, 20, 30 seconds and don't come up for air, it's like, he's not concerned without any danger right there. This is where you need to be hunting this animal, and you get up into them yes, you're going to catch them in them cuts and food plots, but I mean, they're alert, because this is where, they've seen someone, and then they live by association to where it's like, I'm 7 years old. I, you know, this is where I've seen humans come in October 10th, 8th, and they don't have a calendar, but they pretty much know with the daylight that they get that I've seen this. And with this situation, when you get, this clear cut and all these does living here, and there's always, seems like always running like I got to be careful going into these spots. So yeah, you got to be careful in them situations. A lot of them, they don't go until night, but when you can get them, you put it on video and watch these deer on video mode, and a lot of times I'll put them on scrapes. Well, anytime I think I've put too much scent in, there's times I put, maybe summer scouting, and you drop and drip and sweat or move and touch and shit, and this is when you're not scent free. Just it's not possible. And there's times I put them out and put them on video. I had bucks smell me, scent that I left, 2 or 3 mature deer, never seen them again. You know what I mean? So that's a big thing. If I think I'm putting a lot of scent in an area, I'll put my cameras on video. Or if it's like I said, you get to them areas where I want to see their demeanor, if it's a safe area that he's going to retreat to when it's hot, going down for the day to bed down, I'm going to put it on video to see how he reacts. If he's just like cool, calm, collective, like, oh man, that's how he wants to feel in life all the time. And he can't feel that way because he's got to go into areas and breed and live, and, it'd be like, I don't know, maybe the analogy is like, man, a race car driver. It's like, man, there's going to be a crash this week at Daytona. I mean, I know it's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I got to be careful. Or if you're just like, you know, driving in a park, in your car, like maybe there ain't too much of a chance of, I'd rather have this feeling where, man, I don't think we're going to get into a wreck here. It's going to be pretty easy sailing. You know what I mean? So that's how they're wanting to live their life, but they have to go to these areas and do what they do to survive and make ends meet. But yeah, I mean, it's all good stuff, following these animals.
Yeah, what I like what you're talking about here is, and I've noticed this with other really like what I'll call elite hunters like yourself, um, is that you make the deer personable. Like you're getting into the mind of it. And I've even found myself doing at times, and I hear other people do, is we tend to talk as deer are robotic, right? Like it's step one, step two, like they're programmed to do something. And that's not what I hear from the guys who are consistently getting out there and getting it done and doing it for long periods of time. It's more of this like real personable type of like in the mind. I can kind of feel what he's feeling. And it's a way of like intuitively kind of moving through, the woods and kind of figuring out like, if you were him, how would you feel? Where would you want to go? And I really, after listening to you and a few others, like I started to adopt that in my own life. And by no means am I even close to where you guys are at, but I can tell you, even on a small level for a guy like me, it's really changed the game. So if people are listening, I mean, I just love how you describe the personality of how a deer might be thinking as it's moving through there in the safe spots. And you're right, like, it needs to live its life. I don't know if I've ever stopped and just thought like, yeah, he needs to live his life. Like I need to go get in my car and not be worried about dying. Like to some sense, he's got to move through and just kind of deal with it, right? And but at the same time, we're still checking our mirrors and making sure we don't die, and so is
Yeah,
he. But yeah,
yeah,
so I love how you explain that, Johnny. I mean, that's just I think a next level piece that if people start to grab onto and using their own, with their own style and where they're at, I mean, I think that really starts to open up the woods and what you're looking at and understanding your prey. I mean, it's a really cool way of doing it.
yeah. And when you get into a certain animal, so like in PA here, I don't have one like, man, that's the one I want. I mean, excuse me, I do have one big deer. He's going to be a big 8, probably pushing 150, massive. And he's barely an 8, but I'm this is the one I'm kind of talking about in the one area I'm hunting him. But when you start following one animal, you can learn so much more. You can filter out everything, the rest of the deer. And it's been a while since I've had one like. Usually, I'm like last few years, like, hey, if I see a 140 plus, and I have a few of them around PA, it's not, you don't get that tunnel vision and get to actually, you really don't get to learn as much as when you're following one animal. And then once you follow one animal, do it a few times, then you can start to apply it to other deer that you hunt. It's not always the same how they live their life because they see it their way. This other deer sees it another way. Even how deer move in, like one deer dies, another one moves in. I see how they actually see it differently, and they'll hide here or rub here, like, oh, this is how he sees this land and how he chooses to live his life. Well, this one, yeah, that lived there, he does it differently. But so I mean, my goal is to get some. I'm going to film this year. I got a guy to go with me and shoot some good deer on film. But then, and that's what I'm afraid of. Like this bait, I got him up. I'm like, oh man, I don't, because then you just go down, you'll get tunnel vision, and you might be 3 months in and not even kill deer because you're on them. But think about how much you're going to learn. Wow, and then take that to the next deer you hunt. You know what I mean? So when you get that individual and he knows he's the big man on campus, he's going to act that way, and he's going to do things that others don't and that others won't do. You know what I mean? So it's going to be, but you'll learn that through following, him and seeing how he lives.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring us back a little bit here, really quick. You were talking about mass crop, and really early on in the podcast, you had mentioned it looked like it's going to be a good acorn year where you're at. Um, are you talking white oaks, red oaks mixture?
Um, yeah, blacks, reds, whites,
Yep.
you know, and I feel like with as far as mass, that it's not something you can predict. You just got to get out there and kind of know where they are. Drop your pins where the whites or reds and that, but you got to get out there. A lot of times I'll get out in August, September after a storm and see what fell.
Yep.
Um, or just in season, or like I said, like it's great when you have a good acorn crop and you don't know a lot about the area. You just hit the oaks,
Yeah.
check 'em, bump deer, or see, and then do your like that's always effective in those type of areas with a good acorn crop because you're like, man, they're feeding here, like, or pockets that you might find. But yeah, I mean that's a whole, like when you get into some elevation, it could be different from the lower to the mid to the upper as far as mast, and you got to check it all, and I was just talking to the guy that's going to film with me this year, and in my head I'm like, I better start working out a little more, lose some weight. I said, you know what? Come middle August, September, when we check all the cameras, I said that's when, because I'm like dreading because they're checking the cameras in this mountain areas and checking acorns. In the one area I'm hunting in West Virginia. I mean, it's over 2,000 feet elevation difference from the top to the bottom. And we're gonna check it all. We got cameras all over it. So I'm like, oh man, so I'll be ready. But man, I like the mountain hunting. It's just I think I keep gravitating toward the unknown, and because that's where I was when I was 18. I didn't know and I wanted to know, and then like I started closing the gap on that. Now I got to get to areas that are rugged wilderness areas, and it's like I don't know, so now I need to know, you know. I mean, we did a area, we're looking for this one deer. It was 30,000 acres, and we got one picture of him in September and one in November, and we got him in 22 and 21. So that's like, now if we get that deer, chances are he probably die of old age, but now that makes you a good hunter. That well, that's where I'm going. Because I want it to be challenged to that. You know, I got to go through 30,000 acres to find this animal, but when you start zooming out on this 30,000 acres, I mean, you take your 1,000 acres, it's just, what the deer need, and you could read a map and say, okay, so anything, whether it's hunting or like I have an excavation business, and I've done a lot of big jobs, and you could look at it like you can get overwhelmed by the whole thing. You just break it all down to like bunch of 1,000 acre plots out of that 35,000 acres, or what you look at your 1,000, you take the 35,000, you're looking for the same stuff. There's a lot of stagnant land there, but I'm looking for one drainage is lower or one that doesn't fit. And then you start getting it on there and you break out, you know what I mean? But it's all the same thing and just you know, bigger chunks, but you got to break stuff down and to dissect it. You can't get overwhelmed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So do you get stressed out anymore? I mean, or I should even ask, did you ever get stressed out in your journey while you were out hunting and stuff like that? Or were you always kind of a more just kind of take it as it come, I'm learning and more cool headed about things?
yeah, I mean, so many guys would see guys in their spot. I enjoyed being out there and learning. And it was like, okay, it would just help me eliminate areas. There's a guy in the spot. There's a guy that stole my camera. There's a tree stand here. I'm just going to, okay, chances are these deer, nowadays there's good hunters, and maybe they are getting a deer, but most of the time, after a few times in there, most of the guys are, I mean, there are some good hunters, but most of them are just like, okay, that buck probably knows about him. I just keep, no, I never got stressed out because that's what I enjoyed doing. I mean, I like the challenge of everything, whether it's, exercising or, hunting deer or work. Like I always, I feel like you're only as tough as your opponent, and if you got a pretty soft opponent, well, how tough are you? You know what I mean? So,
Exactly.
but I know man, it's just enjoyable being out there. I think with me is my brain it's never stops. And that's what I need. It's just going and thinking about these animals and where would they be and looking at maps. But no, I don't think I've ever yeah, that was a good question, Maggie. I never got stressed out. It's like, I guess, sometimes the odds would get against you. So one thing about hunting these public land deer, I think, is like, it could be weeks maybe that you're in a tree, and the stress mentally, maybe there's stress there, to kill, you know, because you figure if you um put in, maybe you hunted a couple evenings, some all day sits for 2, 3 weeks, and you ain't haven't had an opportunity yet. Maybe because it is that one deer you've been after, or there is hardly any deer in the area. And then when your chance comes, man, you got to be on your A game, and that could play with you mentally. So there's some stress there, I think, but that makes you tough.
Yeah.
Like I know last winter I was into a spot and I hunted there a few days, and, I knew I was going to have one chance at this deer, and I was in there, and it's like he come into 40 yards, and he never, not because of me, he just wise, and he wouldn't come feed on these acorns. Well, it was actually, excuse me, I'll tell you, it was an old buck that lived there. It was only a 7 point, but it was just a south slope acorns that, and I knew when I saw these acorns in October, heavy hunted area, I said, I need to get in here. There were black oaks like marbles. I said, I need to get in here January, but no one's hunting. I left that spot. I had cameras in there, but it told me there wasn't many deer there. And that's another thing. These deer get pushed out of these public areas through the season because everybody's hunting. The mass is still laying there. So they're out
Yeah.
eating acorn everywhere else, and they're just laying. And then this deer, I knew he was going to be there, and it was pretty wild. I went up this hollow, and it was 6 degrees, 8 degrees, and I had to carry my stand, all my gear, and it wasn't a far walk. And the road was here, and I just went up the hollow, and I was just going to go on the south side. It was like 300-yard walk, but I got in a tree. But on the way up the hollow, it was crunchy, and there was like a little thicket right going up the hollow. I parked on a road and I went up the hollow. I'm like, well, guys ain't been here. I'll park my, because otherwise I'd park way up the road, walk down, or I would walk like up over the mountain and down in the hollows. I'm not even let them know I park here, but I'd gone up the hollow and it was 6 degrees. It was snow was crunching. Like, oh, making too much noise. This ain't good. So I got up a few hundred yards up the hollow, got up, got in a tree stand, and I'm sat there all day, saw a little buck, and so I'm looking up the hillside, right? And to my right was the thicket. Now that I'm looking up the hillside, and that's where I came up past on my way in. And I kept telling myself there was probably does laying in that thicket, and you could see where they were feeding right out of that thicket in the open, and it was actually beech nuts, but um, they never come out. I spooked some deer. I know it, but oh well. I was just happy being out in the snow. And it got up to like 25 degrees, and the big 7 point came out up high, way up high in the thicket, and he come out, and he just visually, he's like 200 yards, looked down at the edge of that thicket, watch, 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 and there was another little buck with him would feed on acorns. I seen the bare spot in the snow where the deer were feeding, and that's where he wanted to be. He came down, Matt. 3 times he attempted to come down and feed there. Never heard me. He got to 45 yards, quartering toward like behind a tree, and he said, I ain't doing it. He said, something's not right. It was a pretty awesome hunt. That and I got down, I seen it was beech. He wanted them beech nuts, but I spooked those does on the way in. They didn't come out to feed. He came out up high. I don't think he heard me parking. Nothing like that. He just was going, but that's how smart them thing. He just was like sat there all day for that. But you got that one chance at these public deer, then you got to make it happen because you might go and then you start thinking about all the money you spent, all the time you took off. I try not to think about that, but it's in the back of your head. You're 3, 4 weeks in, you haven't pulled your bow back, and then here comes a chance. It's like I can't F this up. So that's challenging. I like that challenge too. That makes you, man, it makes you really see how good you are under pressure.
Yeah.
Um, but then
Yeah.
again, it all comes back to like also. Another tip is shoot deer, man. You got to shoot. Even like me, when you start uh, hunting maybe a deer, you don't shoot a deer all year, and you get back to where like, man, I forget how to shoot deer. Because when I was 18, 20 years old, I just wanted to kill everything, and I got good at that. But fast forward, you start being choosy of what you want to shoot. And then you're like, man, I haven't shot a deer in a while. I'm like, man, can I do this? And that starts creeping in your head. So it's good to get them doe tags like in September, October, and get kills. Then your confidence goes up. Then when that deer comes in, it's like, I got this, So that's
Yeah.
important,
That's what I use September for, actually. I mean, if I can get it done in September, then yeah, I kind of feel like I, knock the dust off everything and makes me so much more confident going in the rest of the season. One thing I regret, like early on in my career, I think when I started hunting, like the mega bucks and big bucks, videos, those were huge, real tree
Yeah,
videos. And that's what I was seeing. So I was like, well, I'm not gonna kill anything unless I kill that, and
yeah,
I don't know anything. Like the odds of me killing something like that are going to be very low. And I went a lot of years holding off, not killing. And I feel like those years were lost years. Like I missed opportunities to learn and to learn how to kill and, when to draw my bow and all that kind of stuff. I see that a little bit now today where, with Instagram and YouTube and podcast, when we're talking about killing mature bucks and, a new guy comes in and he feels like that's what the standard is. I think it's really important for them to listen to a mindset of a true whitetail master who says like, this is about a process where you start here and you work your way up. And then even something that you said a little earlier was like, I'm looking for that new challenge now. Like I've got to like kind of elevate my way of thinking and this is coming from someone who's sitting on the top of that ladder going, nope, there's some more rungs I got to go. So it's this process, and I firmly believe that you really need to start there with what you're saying. Like, kill some deer, like shoot those does, get those tags, maybe shoot those. I'm all for continuous improvement and challenging yourself, but start off shooting those younger bucks so you can kind of learn and go through that process and enjoy the process. Don't be stressed out about it. This is something we enjoy, and it's life giving.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it's a great process beginning to end, wherever you are in your stage of your hunting career. It's great, man. We can all feed off each other and tell stories and get food for our family and be out in the wilderness and hunt like we were meant to do, I believe, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. I've had you on for, well, I don't know, about an hour and 20 minutes now. And so before, we wrap it all up and everything, is there anything else that you wanted to say? And don't feel pressure to have to say anything, but I always want to give my guests an opportunity to say something. Maybe I didn't ask the right question. Is there anything that you want to leave the listener with?
Um, I'm, I mean, I think we covered some things like I wanted to talk about summer, what I went through here, you know, earlier in the summer and where we are now going forward, what I'm going to do. And another thing, like I said, I talked about my cameras being out for that October and going forward from there. I have a few rut spots, but I'm still going to and I'm going to implement what I said as far as just check spots out. Um, Putting all my eggs in one basket kind of early season, see what I can get done, and then play from there. Um, these deer are there, and in my area with the clear cuts, they're still going to use them for a food source. So I still think they're around. Um, excuse me, in a lot of these areas, you know, your entrance, your access is huge. A lot of these deer on these public lands are living by the roads, parking areas. So take that in consideration when you find a spot. Maybe you might park and check it out, but when you go to hunt it, park way up the road. Don't let anything, don't do anything that's going to trigger these deer to be like something's not right here. But I mean, a lot of my cameras, I'll end up pulling. I'll throw, and just kind of think, just start hunting. I use, so like my rule was one cell cam per state because I don't want to know that stuff either. I mean, that's just I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I mean, use as many as you want if that's what you want to do. But um, I think going into the second week of October into the rut, I'm just going to more or less play it by ear and implement what I said as far as going and checking areas. Man, this is hot. And look at my maps. I mean, none of these are areas that I've been in for years, but don't not know what I know about the deer that are existing, the inventory I get from the early season, and I'm just like I did last year. I just hunted. I just wanted to hunt. I got rid of my camp. Like, I had a few out, but it was mainly I know enough about the area, because you can start focus on those cameras too much, But, and like I said, where I am, what I know now, the deer exist. I know the land. I know where they're going to be, and I just want to go hunt and take my experience and hunt and implement what I said as far as going in and checking areas. Um, yeah, my camera, like the amount of cameras will drop off come second week of October because I'm just going to hunt. You know what I mean? In the areas that I'm hunting, even if I go to another state, you know, the areas I'm hunting, I know hold big deer on public ground. I mean, the things that are there I look for, I talk about is, they need either terrain, cover, just something I always talk about, and some type of inaccessible, think something got to make them inaccessible to, you know, um, get to them. But, so I know there is, I was studying the different states will have that. Maybe it's really rugged, a lot of terrain change features, or maybe there's a lot of cover, or maybe it's a big, maybe it's an island that he's out, so you can't get to him, or you got to use access is difficult. So I'm just going to go hunt these areas and just use my knowledge from the deer I've hunted in the past and check, you know, check spots and see what's hot. But and I also there's instances where I'll just kind of talk about like probe an area and not go in till we might be like last year. I sat back on my early season hunt and watched it, and then moved in for the kill the next day. You know what I mean? Just kind of, that all depends on how many spots do you have. And I know there's a deer here. This is a great spot. It's the only spot I got. I feel like this is my. And then you got a week to hunt it. Well, maybe I'll just, if maybe you don't have that 60% chance. Something's just. I'm going to sit back and watch the area. Watch it. Okay. Now I know more, and it all comes back to knowing. And there's different ways about going at it, whether it's your camera or hiking in there, or just like an observation sit, as you would call it. But yeah, going into November, I'm just going to hunt, man. Not too worried about cameras and stuff. I think all my focus in the summers for that early season, and then I'm just going to play it by ear and go out and enjoy and hunt the area. So
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I mean, I did the same thing with trail cams this year. I ran for the last couple of years. I ran like 30, 35 cameras, and I think I've got 4 out right now, maybe 5. I can't remember.
mhm.
So just went for no reason. I mean, I've no like just wanted to probably just experience things more. I think in the years past, like it just kind of, it's always sitting back there, your camera management and all that. And I just want to get back to just enjoying the hunt and hunting, just like you said, And I think that's a good prescription for all of us, really, is to get back to just enjoying it, getting out there and hunting, you know.
Yeah, and then when you get hung up on trail cameras, you want that. It gives you knowledge, but sometimes like he's there, I got to get in there, and it's not always that way. He might be a half a mile away, so
Yep.
it just kind of it's. And I was there, where I was living by them cameras. I wanted to be instantly. I want to hurry up and get in there. But then I'm like, man, you're throwing your knowledge out the window, and you're relying on what this camera tells you, and it sees this much. He can walk right over here. So I'm like, so in the last few years, yeah, I get my inventory in the summer, and also in December and January, see what's left over, have the cameras out. But get your cameras out in summer, and these areas now that I'm hunting here in PA, they actually been doing a lot of cutting in my area. In the previous, they haven't. There's a lot of big woods with not many cuts. The few cuts were there that all the guys hunted, but now my area is getting to be some. Man, it's getting. So I'm like, man, this is my chance, and it all comes down to your odds. I think I got a chance, so I'm putting a lot of time into this early season, and then just like I said, not rely too much on those cameras. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, man, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time coming out here. It's always, something to learn when you talk. And I know all the listeners are really going to get a lot out of this. I appreciate it so much. Um, where can I mean, I'm sure everybody listening knows where to find you, but where can they find you?
Um, on Instagram, the Johnny Stewart, pretty active there, and then I got a YouTube channel. I'm gonna put some videos out here in a few weeks. Just some hunts last year and some stuff, and we're gonna do it again this year, and I might try to put them out live as the season unfolds, and that's my plan. And that's another thing, like challenge for me, is to take someone else out in the woods that don't have the experience and have two guys and try to get it done that way too. Um, so yeah, that's another way I'm challenging myself. So, um, and in the meantime, whether I kill something or not, hopefully people can kind of see what I see and follow along and learn. It's the biggest thing. I like helping people out can help learn from my mistakes, and I always say that experience means you've done enough things wrong, that you know what to do right, and it took me a lot of years of just, you know, 30 some years of just walking. And like recently I asked myself things, and it is, I think the big thing that does help me is visualizing, not just using the aerial photo, the satellite imagery or whatever it might be to top those. Look at a spot on there, and if you were dropped in that area, or if I was going to drop you in that area, could you describe it to me? There's a lot of cherry trees in that area, and the ground's really irregular, some humps and bumps, or there's some cover there, and so that's a big thing that's helped me is actually look at that map and visualize what's there, because you know the land enough, like you can describe what's there, and then you're just, once you know how the animal like to travel in that, and then because he knows how to get from point A to point B. He knows where to cover. He knows where to food. He knows that, like you know your house. He knows that 3 or 4 square miles. So once you get as close as you can to what he knows, then you're going to be better at hunting. And like I said, I mean, even, and I'm learning every year. I don't know everything, and like last year, just being out there with a camera in and hunting a lot, and every year that I hunt 4 to 6 states, and I set the goal high, and if and at the end of the season, I'm happy. I'm happier than a pig in mud, because I worked hard, and I'm like, man, I learned so much. Remember this happened, and I journal in my Spartan Forge app. It's a huge help, just, and then when I, in these, not just a daily log of what happened, but how do I want to do this differently? And what should I do next year? And it might be like a week hunt in Ohio. Then at the end, I'll put a list of what I've learned, what I should do next year. I take notes everywhere. In my phone, I got the little pencil in there. I got notes in there. I got notes in Spartan Forge, or I'll text myself stuff when I'm driving, so, and I got all these, some of them are all identical, but I'm always, when I'm thinking or telling myself, I got all these notes everywhere, and I got a notepad I carry with me every day, and I write everything down. So I got it in my phone, and I got it on a pencil, and I cross it off. Then I got it in Spartan Forge, and I got a notepad, all this stuff, um, that and it's, and it's only recently, more in the recent years, that I've done that, because I know when I was younger, I remember, I remember. Then you get older, like, I don't remember. I can't remember all that, because you are expanding your range, and putting more knowledge in there, and with your cameras, and you're gaining this more. You can't keep it all, in your mind. So yeah, journal stuff down, and write questions and answer your questions, and leave it there. And I might go away from stuff, because you have stuff to do with the family, or work, or whatever you might do, but it's there somewhere. I got to, okay, where did I want to? I think I wrote that in my phone. Where was that in March? And I go all the way down through it. What I want to do for June, July, and then I'll go over to, I'll look in the app and look at my journaling. Where did and then it just helps you, you know, figure out where you want to be for the following year. And then, like I said, you start going, expanding. You have to do that, because it's like, you know, one state, maybe one piece of public, and then you're over here, you're getting your tunnel vision in this, and then you get, okay, what do I need to do here? Let me look at this, So, but yeah, it's a never ending deal.
Yeah. But to summarize it, it's continuous improvement while putting the puzzle together. Like you're just always putting that puzzle together, trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, man, thanks again so much. And thanks to all the listeners for stopping by the dojo again. We're going to be back next Thursday with another Whitetail Master. And we're also back on Tuesdays with the 10-Minute Tuesday. And don't forget, we also are on YouTube, and we'll have all of our video podcasts on there, and the Mentality vlog on Wednesdays at 9. So a lot out there for you to consume. We'll see you soon. And until then, embrace the journey.